welcome Steve, our next speaker for today, and he's going to be talking about how we fan the flames of passion, which is so important to be able to ignite that fire and to be able to provide us the motivation to be able to carry on through life. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about Steve's background. I know he's done lots of stuff in the education space, been teaching, been working with teachers, and has a real heart for youth. So Steve, tell us about yourself and your background with teaching education.
Okay, so education was a bit of a later career actually for me. So one of the things that I'll talk about a little bit later is working through a variety of careers. And for me, teaching came in my mid-30s or late 30s actually. And so I spent 16 years as a classroom teacher across 2 different schools. And since then, I have worked in teacher professional development. So I guess I never got into serious in-school management. I spent time as curriculum lead and some time as a team leader, but never spent time in middle management. I looked at the role and what was involved and just felt like, yeah, my life was busy enough.
Absolutely, yeah. And so one of the ways that we started talking about this year was we were talking about what are the challenges in the current education system, and you were so passionate about all of the challenges that you were seeing, the difficulties, because things are changing so fast. So please, Steve, if you can just tell us, what do you see are the current challenges in the education system?
I think for me, one of the biggest ones is a combination around workload. So I think that teacher workload is very high, and I think some of that can be self-driven, and we might talk about that a little bit as well. But when you get a step up from that, like as a team leader, I was aware of the increase in workload. And then for assistant principals and deputy principals who also have a class, that workload's just insane. And then I think when you get into being a principal, actually that focus shifts so much to administration that, you know, somewhere in that process, learning can get lost, or the focus on the learner can get lost. And I think that's one of the things that really concerns me, that people get so busy with all the stuff that sometimes they lose the focus on actually what is the main thing. So that's one of the big concerns for me. I think there are other things. I think that there's so much going on that teachers don't have time to assimilate new research and the things that can do to assist pedagogy and assist them being really successful in with their class and with their learner achievement. So I think that finding a way to enable that is really important, because I think that teachers don't know what they don't know and don't have time to go looking for it. So I think that's a big deal as well.
Yeah, that was one thing that I was talking with another teacher a couple of months ago, and she was like, look, just don't tell me more stuff. Don't tell me more stuff. Tell me how I can actually use this stuff. It's almost like everybody is drowning in information and we can't necessarily use it to be able to effect change. And that was one of the things that I was talking with you about earlier this year when we were talking about this. You were saying things are changing so fast, particularly in that technology space. And you were working with teachers and they were like, how do we learn this stuff quickly enough in order to be able to teach it? And that's some of the things that is so difficult with the education system, isn't it? Is that it is so difficult to change the content because it's so fixed in many different ways within the curriculum. And so not only, which is adding to the workloads, not only are we having to do all much more paper and things, but it's almost like what we're teaching is no longer relevant to the students that we're working with.
Yeah. And
I'm hearing that everywhere.
Yep. And I think that's true. The whole digital thing has become a big deal within the curriculum. So the addition of the digital curriculum, and that was supposed to be effective by the beginning of this year. Most of the schools that I'm working with either aren't there, or some of them almost are right back at the beginning, just because of time to deal with that. And I think when you operate in the primary school environment, that becomes even worse, because there's not that release time, that out of the classroom time that perhaps secondary teachers get.
Yes.
So it's in first thing in the morning, go all day, and then you've got assessment and all of those other things and meetings and stuff that you have to deal with.
You're absolutely right. You've got a dog there, Steve.
Let me deal with him for a second. He doesn't understand when I talk to my computer.
Right.
Sometimes.
And he's saying, please come and talk to me instead, is he?
I think he wants me to let him out, actually.
Okay. Right.
So I think that time to reflect on practice and time to have space just to work on developing your own pedagogical processes, and time to think about how can I improve the outcomes for my learners? What can I do that's going to make that difference? And I think that we don't, that's not built in, especially for primary school and intermediate school teachers. That's not built into the program, and so it becomes another thing that gets added on top. And so when people like myself come in with professional development and bringing the latest research and so on, I hear that, I've got all this other stuff to do. And so one of the things I work very hard around is saying it's not about working more, it's about working smarter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of the things that this is providing us the opportunity to do is to reframe what we're doing with our students, to actually reframe what are the needs that they actually have, because it's so easy particularly within that system, isn't it, where things have been going on this pathway and this is what you need to do because this is what you need to know when you leave school. Then all of that is changed now, because so many people that we're talking to are saying, but that didn't actually serve me. I didn't need to know that stuff that I learned at school. And that's really quite scary as teachers, I think, to actually stop and think, all of this stuff that I've been putting my life into, it's no longer needed. So what do I need to do to be able to change that?
Yeah. And like I've just been hearing in the media this morning, actually, around the fact that learners who pass NCEA level 2 are not at adult levels of literacy and mathematical ability. And it's like, oh my goodness. And here's another level of challenge for teachers.
Yes.
And one of the early responses was, oh, well, lower down the school, they have to do a better job. And so again, that pressure comes further down the school, back into sort of intermediate and primary school level. And how do we engage our learners in a way which motivates them to learn to the level that they need to learn? And that's the driving question, because
I agree.
It was Einstein, I think, who said, insanity is doing the same thing we've always done and expecting different results. And we can't just keep doing that. But for most teachers, the kinds of changes they need time.
Yes.
And that becomes a real challenge. Yes. How do you carve out that time when you've already got a busy workload?
Yes, absolutely. And I heard that as well. And what I was seeing again was, okay, we need to add in another assessment. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So
okay,
just to
so
create a whole bunch of time saving, let's just take out a whole lot of the assessment, and that'll save teachers a whole bunch of time,
absolutely,
because it's actually not doing us any good anyway.
that's right.
So
Okay, so let's move on from that. We've talked lots around the challenges that are in that current education, in the current education system. So, Steve, what do you wish you'd learnt at school?
I wish I'd learned adaptability, flexibility. I wish there had been a much greater integration of the curriculum, so that in fact it wasn't as isolated and separated off, because life's just not like that.
Yeah. So that's in the subjects that you were learning as well as integrated into your life.
Yeah. So how are these useful for me? How are they relevant? There's only a tiny percentage of the population who will ever become professional mathematicians. So they're the only ones who are going to be interested in mathematics as a concept in and of itself. So actually we need to be able to contextualize that much more. And I mean, I think the same thing goes for a lot of other subjects like science and all of that. Actually, how's this going to be useful to me? Yes. And we didn't learn that process of application and adaptation for what we were learning. It was like, school was like a mini version of the old English university academic thing, where it's all over here and it's all academic for the sake of being academic, which, how many kids at school are actually going to be academics? Very, very few. Absolutely. So we need to change, adapt, find new ways.
Fantastic. So that leads us very, very nicely into what we're going to be talking about today, which is about fanning the flames of passion. And that fits so well, ignite the fire and ignite your leadership, ignite that flame. Because to me, education is not about filling a pail. It's about igniting a fire. And that's that saying by W.B. Yeats. And I've thought about that so often over the years, actually, and this year more than ever. So I'm wanting to ignite people's fires and help them, what is it that ignites you? What is it ignite that will help to make a difference and bring people to life and people in education, through the education system, rather than trying to pour subjects into people's heads? Why is it so important to continue to fan the flames of passion for what you do?
I think there's several things for that. The first one that immediately occurs to me is, if you're not passionate about what you do, then it can be really hard to get out of bed in the morning. You know what I mean? So, for me, there has to be a reason to go to work. There has to be a purpose, or otherwise, I might as well go and, be a machine operator or somebody who just does repetitive things all day, because the passion's important around that, but passion's what drives you to continue improving. Do you know what I mean? It's that enthusiasm for, how do I do this as well as I can possibly do it? And it's that kind of passion that drives people to look at what they're doing and ask those questions about, how can I do this better? How can I do this smarter? How can I engage the people that I'm working with at a greater level? Those are the kinds of questions that come out of that passion. So that's what continues to drive that level of improvement, but it's what continues to motivate me, or each of us, for what we do. It's that part that actually, it helps us to enjoy what we do. It helps us to be enthusiastic about what we do. And those are critical things, particularly if you're involved in education. I say to teachers a lot, if you can't get excited about this stuff, then your learners never will. Do you know what I mean? And so that that comes from passion, that
Mm.
that actually what I do with these kids makes a difference.
Mm.
You know, I'm making a difference for
Mm.
them.
Mm.
And that it's important that we keep that going, because at that level, we engage them in ways that we don't otherwise.
Mm.
And we begin to light their fires.
Mm.
And you know, who knows what that will be for.
Yeah.
It could be anything. You know, you might be doing a little art thing around making puppets or something, and you know, that might light some kid's fire.
Mm.
And it's not my thing, but if I'm not going to get enthusiastic about it, then I'm not going to light their fire either.
Mm.
And so that comes from my passion, not about the immediate, but about that big picture of what I'm doing and why I'm here.
Mm.
And it gives me a sense of purpose.
Yep.
This is why I do what I do.
So Steve, that's a really good thing to ask there around, you've got a question around, do I have to find the thing which ignites my passion? How do I do that? Like, what is this, the thing?
Yeah. I think I know, we all probably know people who were at primary school and all they ever wanted to be was ... You know, you can put in whatever it was. They want to be a doctor or a train driver, or, you know, whatever it was. And some of those people, good on them, have gone on and done that and are still really passionate about that. But a lot of people who had that kind of thing, it didn't work out how they expected. So, for example, I was at Teachers College with a young woman. She was 21, 22. She'd left school, she'd gone to uni, she'd done educational psychology, and then she was doing a graduate diploma of teaching, and all she ever wanted to be was a teacher. You know, she lasted just on 2 years, and now she's doing something else. And so your passion, that there isn't a thing. I don't think. We might change careers a lot of times. And, you know, through my kids, I know a lot of millennials, and, you know, they're just not, you know, you young people are just not about a career for life, which was, I guess we, at my age, we kind of grew up with a sense of that because it's what our parents did.
Yes.
But life's changed for us along the way. And, you know, what I'm currently doing is about my fourth or something, I don't know, fifth, maybe, I don't know, whatever it is, because we kind of shifted from that and we've changed from that a bit. And it's not about finding the thing as much as it's about being passionate and motivated for what it is that you're doing now.
Yeah.
And that's what matters. And sometimes it's doing the not particular, it's following the not expected course. So, you know, a couple of my kids would be an example here. Petra, for example, at the end of school, she didn't know whether she should do graphic design or economics, because those were the two things that she was relatively good at. And so she couldn't decide what to do about uni, and she couldn't decide, and she was about to take a year off, a gap year, you know. And I sat down with her and I said, look, if you could go to university and just do whatever you wanted, not worrying about a career at the end, just do whatever you wanted, what would you do? And she said, well, I'd go and do classics. And I said, so go and do classics, you know, and she did. And, you know, that's been great, because she spent 3 years doing what she loved and what she was keen on, rather than worrying about the end result, which for her was really important. And now she's got a career which is completely unrelated to classics, but she's doing really well and she's enjoying what she does. And so sometimes it's not necessarily about doing what's expected. It's about following what interests you, what you're enthusiastic for, and seeing where that takes you. So I think that's it. And the other side of it is, I'm here. I need to do what I'm doing to the best of my ability. And that requires my passion and my enthusiasm for what I'm doing. And, you know, I've worked in retail environments, you know, which can be relatively boring in a sense, but if I can't get enthusiastic about the products I'm selling, then the people that are coming into the shop aren't going to get enthusiastic about them either, And so it's about putting in that best effort, that enthusiasm for where you are and what you're doing right at that time. Until such time as you think, you know what, really enough. And you go and find something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a great example when you're talking about retail, it's the enthusiasm about the product, and it's also particularly so important in retail, that enthusiasm about building the relationship with your clients, because and some people will be enthusiastic about the products, some people will be enthusiastic about the clients and that relationship there, but more and more and more, it's we're human beings, we're wired for connection, and so being able to find meaning in helping other people can help to build a passion, if you like, in between.
Absolutely. And it might be that you're a young woman who works in a women's fashion store, and it can be that passion about helping your client find the garment that is going to make them feel really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
so it may be about that, or helping them in a coffee shop, for example, helping them to be able to come and relax and take that 5 minutes out of the day, or 10 minutes or 15 minutes, or be able to.
A great barista. Oh man. Somebody who's actually, who's got a bit of energy and a bit of passion, and and is out there enough to have a chat. And I know some people who work in front of house industries, and the persona that you see isn't their persona necessarily. It's what they do when they're in that environment for that time, and that's what you have to do. And it doesn't matter whether you're making coffee, selling dresses, or sometimes it doesn't matter what it is. If you can find some enthusiasm and passion for it, then you will connect with other people, because somewhere along the line, somebody else will be enthusiastic about that as well, and you'll connect with them, or they'll listen to you and they'll go, oh, wow, I never knew. And you'll drive something for them, and that builds that connection. And so those are really important things, because out of that comes your sense of purpose and meaning in what you're doing.
Absolutely. And both of those two examples there, we've had customers involved with it as well. And I know that not everybody is wanting to go and serve customers as part of their role, and we need people to be able to focus on the detail, to be able to go and really do a good job about the research and so on that backs up performance. And so again, it's about finding that passion, being able to follow your skill set in that particular line, and to do the best job in that particular space, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've talked about the kind of retail-y end, but for those in education, that relationship is critical.
Yes.
Because that's what will make the difference. And the higher up the school you go, the more of a challenge that becomes. Because once you get into a secondary setting, you're not seeing the same kids all day, every day, like you do in a primary or intermediate. And then once you get into a university setting, you're seeing them a lot less, really. So you have to think about, how do I build that connection with these young minds, these young people, so that I can light their fires.
Yes.
Flames.
Particularly when their flame is not in the traditional academic area. We've got so much focus on that, on the assessments, and it comes back to what you talked about when you were thinking about, what do I wish I'd learnt at school? And that's having that real, authentic, integrated education.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about how do I find the way to present the learning in a way that the learner will connect with. Because I'm a very strong believer in when you're in education, if you're the educator, teacher, lecturer, whatever, then you're the professional in the room. And so if people aren't succeeding, it's your responsibility to do something different so that they can. It's not them that needs to change, it's you. And particularly when we're looking in a primary school environment where you have that time and that relationship, it's like, I know this kid. What do I have to do to engage them? How do I have to change what I do or contextualize what I do? And sometimes it's just about taking that piece of writing and putting it into a rugby context or putting it into an animal context or whatever it is. Like when I was teaching year 5 and 6 once, we did an entire unit on bugs because there was a really disengaged learner in the class who was all about spiders, you know, and not my thing, okay? Just saying.
But it became your thing, and you were so passionate about spiders for that particular period of time, and and it comes back to
and suddenly the level of his engagement and the level of his performance went up because you know, it was like, well, we're doing maths. Let's do it. Let's base as much of this as we can around 8s because that's how many leagues they got, kind of thing. You know, it's whatever I can do to draw a context into what's going to engage this particular learner or that particular learner. And when you've got a class of, you know, at times I've had as many as 35 as a primary school teacher, it's like, that's a lot of different contexts maybe. So how do I engage and continue to engage those learners? And particularly those learners who are struggling to meet the requirements education.
And it comes back to knowing your child, doesn't it? And there's that saying, do you see me? Do you know me? Because if we don't see the child, like really see them, if they don't know that they are seen, if they don't know that they are known and really feel that, then we can't teach them anything anyway, you know? And who are we? Who are we to think that we have the right when we're not taking that time to be able to understand their context and what's going on for them and what might light their fire? So we're adding all of this other sort of stuff, aren't we?
For our Māori and Pacifica learners, it's critical that you both learn something about their culture and acknowledge that within the classroom. And that doesn't necessarily have to be a big deal. When I was at St. Bridget's, we had a 26% Filipino population at the school. So most of them spoke Tagalog. And so I thought, you know, we learned to count in English and we learnt to count in Te Reo Māori. And I said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to learn to count to 20 in every language that is spoken in the home of kids in this classroom. And I did that for several years. And I learnt to count to 20 in Spanish and in Tagalog and all these different languages. But suddenly there's a level of engagement for these learners. I learned it in Italian. You know, it's just like there's a level of engagement for these learners because actually something about who I am is important.
Yes.
And that went beyond the learning of the counting to 20 to other aspects in the classroom because actually my teacher's making an effort to get to know me. Now, that's a really simple thing you can do. But it doesn't take a lot, but it says a lot.
Yes. And having been a language teacher myself and from a family of language teachers, there is so much culture that is carried in a language. And so to have a language that is valued is a really, really important part of that. And to have other children in the class recognizing that, you know, this particular person there's a whole other side to them that we didn't know about if we just stay in that English environment, isn't it? So it's a very, very powerful tool.
Absolutely. And I think particularly around our Māori and Pacifica learners, you know, I've heard this saying, particularly comes from a friend of mine, and he said, what works for Māori works for everyone.
Yes.
You know, and so it's acknowledging some of that culture and the fact that they do things differently and maybe they learn a little differently. And so maybe we need to allow some of that different approach to learning into our classrooms. Or if you've got 20-30% Pacifica in your classroom, know something about their culture and what's going to engage them, but what's going to enable their learning as well. And I think you'll find that that will work for most of the learners within your class, rather than sticking with our sort of tried English approach, which works for some, not for all. And I think that's for me, the single biggest challenge
Mm.
for us educationally. It's the fact that our education system is failing people, and schools think they're doing really well when they're getting 80, in the 80% success. And yes, in a sense they are, but that still leaves as much as 20% of kids who are not succeeding. And for me, that's not good enough. For me, that's not
comes
enough.
back to that same thing. Absolutely. And it comes back to that thing around what is success.
Yeah.
So what is success for the teacher, but also what is success for these students?
Yeah.
So, okay, so we've got a whole lot more stuff that we're bringing in here. Our next question is, how do we keep this passion and enthusiasm for what we do when the mahi piles up and the pressure is on? And that is true for every single person in the world, isn't it? That we start off doing something and then the mahi piles up, the work piles up, the pressure is on, life happens. And I know so many people that say, stop the bus, I want to get off for a little while. So how do we keep that passion and enthusiasm going?
And you're right, it does happen everywhere. I see this for my wife who works in, the elder care industry, and I see it for everybody I know and everybody I talk to, it's the same. And, teachers tend to go on a little bit about it, but actually I see exactly the same thing everywhere else if I just take the time to talk to people. So at heart, it's about making the main thing the main thing. That's what it's about. And looking at, what else am I doing? What is all this mahi I'm doing? What are all these things that are filling and overflowing my in tray or, or whatever it is, or my brain, and going, actually, what's really critical to the main thing here? For educators, that has to be improved student learning. That's got to be the main thing. And so if that's the main thing, what am I doing that's really helping that? And what am I doing that actually isn't? And then maybe I don't need to be doing so much or any of that, what actually isn't. And sometimes when you're looking at that from a work perspective, sometimes that what I'm not going to do has to be kind of negotiated with leaders in a sense. But if it's not tracking towards the key purpose for what you're doing, then actually it's not helping you be successful, and it's not helping anybody you're working with be successful. So that's absolutely critical to keeping that passion going. It's what's the main thing, and remembering that's why I'm here. That's what this is about. This is what lights my fire, and keeping that there. And that's critical, staying focused. And I think another thing about keeping that going and how do I keep that passion alive is about attending to myself and my own well-being. If I can't be at my best, then I'm not able to get the best out of those that I'm working with. And that doesn't matter whether you're working in a team environment, education environment, nursing environment, whatever. If I can't be at my best, then those around me aren't going to be able to be at their best either. And so it's actually maintaining my personal well-being that is critical to maintaining the passion. Because when your well-being drops, the passion's one of the first things that goes.
Absolutely.
And it's that whole you're dragging yourself to work and and all of this stuff. And in New Zealand, we seem to have this culture of it's not okay to be not okay. When actually it is okay to be not okay, and we have to be better at allowing people to say, I'm not okay, or at doing that ourselves and saying, actually, I'm not okay. Something's not right. And, and I need time or space or support or whatever it is I need to be okay again so that I can perform at my best. And that's critical to maintaining that passion and that enthusiasm.
So that feeds into another couple of questions here, and that's, what can you do if you find that passion and enthusiasm waning, Or if you've already lost it, what do you do then? Like because I know that there are times in my life when I felt that as well, when I've just like, there's no point in this, and how to recover it. And I suppose the first thing is identifying that it's going, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then, So what do you do when you find that passion or enthusiasm waning, or when you realize, oh, I've already lost it? What do you do?
Yeah, I think the core to answering that question is once you've identified that, because it wanes or it disappears before you realize it.
Yeah.
And so the first thing is, I've had, 3 crap days in a row where it's been an awful couple of weeks, and it's like, what's going on? Why is that? And okay, the passion's waning or it's dropping. So then becomes identifying why that's happening.
Yes.
Why is it that I'm losing that? And there can be a bunch of things which will impact and drive that out of you. If you're in education and the thing that's killing your passion is the kids, then you desperately need to find another job, because you are going to work with kids. That's the deal, And if the kids are killing your passion, then you need to become passionate about something else, And look, I imagine everybody watching this and listening to this will have been taught by somebody who is tired and burnt out and cynical, and look, you probably actually don't remember them so much because they just fade, because they're not important, because they didn't ignite your fire or they didn't feed the flames. Actually people like that, for their own well-being, first of all, actually need to get out and do something else. And also for the well-being of their learners as well. So if that's it, you're in trouble if you're in education. And it could be if you're in nursing and it's the patients that are doing it, find another, whatever it is, you're a firefighter and it's the constant drilling and practicing and going to fires, whatever it is. So if it's core like that, you need to make a change. And that's an important place to get to. And it's a really challenging place to get to, particularly if you're older and it's been a lot of years in that career. That can be a challenging place to get to, and it can be really scary because actually I'm not trained for anything else. I don't have it. What am I going to do? And at that point, you need to actually spend some time with somebody who can actually help you and talk you through that process. That's critical. Probably somebody like you guys at BSI, who can help with that little plug bed. You notice that?
It's really, really good.
There are other possibilities. Is it structural? Is it about the terms of the work, or how things are done, or the way that they're done, or the level of expectation around them, or all of that kind of stuff? And if that's the case, then you need to start to address some of those things. And perhaps it comes back to what I was talking about a few minutes ago. Do I actually need to be doing all of this stuff? Is some of this stuff actually not feeding me? Is it not driving that main point? And if that's the case, then I need to find ways to either minimize it or completely do away with it, because it's not helping. And that's the thing, isn't it? Is, you talked before about the admin and it piling up, and that's a really, really good question that you're asking there, is why are we doing this? And as I've been working with teachers over the years as well, it's the same question that I'm doing, asking, why are you doing that? What's the result? Is it producing good outcomes, better outcomes for yourself, for the teachers, for the students, for their families? If it's not, why are you doing it? Are you doing it for ERO? Are you doing it for the ministry? Are you doing it for why? If we're doing it for ERO or for the ministry or for any of those reasons, actually we're doing it for the wrong reason. And we either have to reorganize how we do it or just stop doing it. Do you know what I mean? Because there's this mania in education around ERO. There's this, and I'm a little unusual in this sense, but I'm of the impression, I'm of that ilk that says ERO should just rock up one day unannounced and see what I do, and then if they've got some feedback around that, then great, I'm learning something. But schools go into this meltdown period before ERO come, where they manically do all this stuff, and it's like, I wonder, actually, I think Aero people probably see through most of that anyway.
Yeah, they do, actually. Yeah.
But if Aero is the reason that I'm doing it, then it's the wrong reason and you shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what you're doing in your classroom with your learners should be the most important and the best you can do for them. And when Aero come, if they see that is what you're doing, then they're going to be okay with that. You know?
I wonder, here's a challenge for you, Steve. I wonder what would happen if every single teacher in the country started the year with asking their students, what are you hoping to gain from this year?
What a great idea. What a
amazing, wouldn't it?
idea. Yeah.
Yep.
Because then that gives you what we were talking about before. That gives you that key, that connection that I know. And therefore, if this is what they want to achieve, how do I engage that? How do I do that? How do I take this piece of learning, whatever it is that they need to learn, and how do I contextualize that in a way which is going to feed what it is that they're looking for? What's your goal for the year? And I often do that, actually, when I had a class. It's like, what are your goals for this year? And I'd make them think about, what is their goal for learning at school? What is their goal for outside of school? What do they want to do? What are they, you know? And
then it integrates it into their lives, doesn't it?
Learn to ride a bike for some of them, or was learn to swim a length in the pool, or, there's all these things that didn't directly relate to learning, but actually it gave me a really good insight into the learners. And it said, okay, if I've got these kids wanting to learn that, then we can put this into a context which is going to engage them with that. And that makes a difference.
Fantastic.
And it actually makes my job interesting because I get to learn a whole bunch about them.
Absolutely, which helps you integrate it into their lives and make it more meaningful and everything else. Thank you so much, Steve, for sharing your thoughts on passion, on keeping those flames of passion alive, on finding them in the first place. And I think one of the things that's come through what you've been talking about is don't sweat it. We don't have to set those flames of passion that will stay there throughout our lives. It's about doing the big thing now and focusing on that big thing now.
Yeah.
Don't get the small stuff around it.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Steve.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.